Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the South Florida Tribune Podcast. This is the Three Stooges version. My name is Scott Morganroth, a.k.a. Mo. And Joe Littman, who do you want to classify yourself as?
Larry.
Larry, and then that means we got Curly, as in Ron.
That's me.
It's us. We're back. Again, and again, and again, every few weeks, whatever, a couple weeks. Come up with some new interesting candid material. And tonight, we're going shopping for some big ticket items. My goodness, all right. And I'm going to tell you, one of my favorite items I like to shop for is our cars. And knowing that I've been brought up through the years in the Motor City, not that you can tell by the Motor City badmouth, okay? You know, my dad, many years ago, had a car broker business called purchasing service where they used to go ahead and sell these vehicles under cost and then ship them all over the place. There was a nice 20-year shelf life there. So that's how I got into it earlier. And of course, everybody knows being in the Motor City, you know, they have 9 million car dealerships that you can negotiate all over the place anyhow. And then in another lifetime ago, I used to sell automobiles in Arizona. I sold Fords actually at a couple of dealerships. And I've always viewed the fact that I had some good training in this industry. I learned from my dad. I learned from an uncle named Harold Kowal, who was involved with the car brokership with my dad. Another guy named Ronnie Grant that nobody will ever know, but he was a wild animal who taught me in-home sales and knew how to negotiate with cars. So I learned from the best. And I've always looked at car salesmen as a bunch of chirping birds looking for their robs. If you want to go to a car dealership, there's one, there's two, there's three, there's four. And all of a sudden, boom, there you go. But you know how I used to go ahead and get around these clowns? You know, while everybody's standing on there looking for their ups, I used to go ahead and hide in the cars, and nobody would see me. And when somebody walked up to the lot, I used to snap them up before these guys could get to them. Until the manager says, you're not allowed to do that. So, well, guess what? Too bad, I'm going to do it. And if you want to fire me, no problem, I'll go somewhere else. Of course, I would later wind up in the home improvement business anyways, where I belong. But when you talk about a bunch of chirping birds looking for their ups, jam, let's take it to the manager, blah, blah, blah. I'll give you the old routine later. So, you know, I got to go back to one of my favorite car experiences on a Father's Day. I'm getting my wife an automobile, and I already played one dealer to give me a $1,500 trade-in on a Honda that's pretty old, so it had a lot of miles. So I decided, let's go to a local Honda dealership here in Southern Florida. I won't mention the name. And that $1,500 appraisal I got from the other day, I got these clowns here on a day where they were really, really slow. And got them to give me $2,500 for it, sight unseen. And then I decided to do a little shopping on line for the find out, and only got my price after a while. The moral of the story is on Father's Day, they didn't have any sales going into the end of the day, and I made sure that the only way you're going to get one is do it my way, and we were the only sale of the day so that they at least could pay the electric bill. So, folks, here's some good advice. If you ever want to buy a car, do it on Father's Day. They're dead as a doornail. And my wife got herself a beautiful Honda, and I found these clowns here taking $2,500 of air out of my pocket, and she would end up telling me later on how many things were really wrong with it. I said, well, it's better I didn't know about it, and I wouldn't have cared because I was like iron anyways.
Plausible deniability.
There you go.
Exactly. Once I got him to sign the paperwork, only to find out that you couldn't open up the hood because there was a hanger probably connected to it, and I can't even tell you, the air conditioning wasn't working. There were so many things wrong. Who knows where that thing got shipped? But she got a new Honda Civic. Unfortunately, the same dealership that I ended up getting, or that Honda dealership, they've had a few other opportunities to get my business at a later date. Never got it. Oh, well, life goes on. So, folks, if you're going to get a vehicle, do it on Father's Day or any other day. They're slow. They're looking to pay the bills. And as I said, for all my fellow car dealerships, you're a bunch of chirping birds looking for your ups, and I'll just hide out in the cars and snap them all up. And then I had a guy out in Arizona one time who tried to cut in front of me when I was going after him. He said, I'll never forget his name. It was Bo Gutierrez he was actually from the New Mexico area. And he says to me, Scott, next time he does that, snap his legs in half. So I walk up to this old schmuck here right on the lot. I said, you do this again, I'm going to snap your legs in half. He goes ahead and complains.
My.
Oh, this may not be a Johnny Lightning moment. We're getting close to it.
Are you talking about a customer?
No, I'm talking about what I nearly did to a sales rep that got in front of me.
Okay.
So he said, did you really say this to him? I said, yeah, Bo told me to tell him. So this guy goes out there and says, Bo, you're not supposed to do that. You're training these guys the wrong way. Hey, he's a very aggressive guy. That's Scott. I want to make sure he gets it. So he just said, did what I told him. I'll snap his legs in half. You get in front of me again. So between the hidden card trick and snap them in their legs, oh my goodness. So be it. Life at the dealership.
Life at the dealership. That's some story. That's some story. Well, I get a little one. I really, the last couple of cars I bought, I had good experiences with a local dealer. But I do have a little story is shopping for a refrigerator. And you have to understand, we had our refrigerator probably at that point was 24, 22 years old. So is how often I go buy things, okay? So it finally went out and we needed a refrigerator. So we went into a big box store. And I just was, probably because I was out of the refrigerator biz so long, I didn't realize what these things are. We're going around seeing these things with these touch screens. You can watch TV in your refrigerator, and it was all this really, really weird stuff. And then the guy's like, we have this model. Do you want this? Do you instant hot, instant cold, all this kind of stuff. I was just like, felt like a dinosaur. So finally, I mean, we picked pretty much a simple old style refrigerator, and we're happy with it. But I mean, I can't believe you're in the kitchen, you can watch TV. But and this the prices, and they add on this service. Do you want the service plan? Do you want the extra? You can come out twice a year and charge. And fortunately, the refrigerator works. It's cold, and that's all I need. But it just shows when you're out of the shopping for a while. But that's okay. Hopefully, this one will last 20 years. Who knows? But
no, it won't.
No, it won't. That's true.
They don't make things that could be another show. They don't make things to last like they used to.
Oh, that's
true. I remember my grandparents had a gas dryer that was literally like 30 or 40 years old.
Wow.
Refrigerators that lasted over 20 years. Things don't last like that anymore, especially not things that are electronic, touch screens. When you first said that, like I know somebody that has one of those and they had problems with it. And you're right. I think the way to go is just to buy an appliance that does what you expect that appliance to do. Keep your food cold. Maybe give you some ice and water out the door. But that's about all the frills that I need for. And actually, my refrigerator, I have a service call coming out because the water and the ice on the door, the little pad, the button isn't making it come out. And they're going to fix it, but the more fancy those things get, the more, electronics, I think you're just asking for trouble.
You're right.
I got to tell you, I had a short stint in the RV business too. And boy, you want to talk about a bunch of dream buyers. I was able to sell a couple of them. The only problem was you couldn't get nobody bought because of credit, because it was a luxury item. But boy, I'll tell you, I learned a good lesson about Class C motorhomes versus Class A motorhomes. And I'll tell you, I may not be a boat guy, but down the road, I got a good education when it came to those things. So,
talk about high ticket items. I always thought those were cool. That's something I would like to do, is go RVing at some point. It's a expensive proposition, but it does seem like a fun thing to do.
I would recommend, if you want to do that you rent one first.
That's a good idea.
See if you like it, because
that's a good idea.
There's probably a lot of people that get romanticized about owning an RV and then don't like it, and then somebody else get a really good deal on the RV.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like everybody wants a boat until you actually own a boat.
Yes, and there are people that I have friends that use their boat all the time, and it's great for them. They're always on their boat, and other people who rarely go on and would have been better served just renting one when they wanted to use one rather than than buying one outright. You know, they're
my
saying that the happiest days of boat ownership is when you buy it and when you sell it.
Talk about high ticket.
In an RV, though, then I do a boat because at least I know what's underneath me, and I don't know what. When you get stuck in the water, you get stuck in the water. You get stuck on the road, you still got AAA. But I see your point, though, Joe. You should be able to go out there, rent one for a while, see if you like it before you end up doing it. So.
Yeah,
That is,
and then there's different ways to go. You have the ones that you can drive, then you have the fifth wheel ones that you pull in the truck, and then then you have the little pop up ones.
If I were going to do anything with an RV, I'd get a Class C motorhome on the ambulance style looking ones. You're not very good with.
Yeah.
At least I could go out there and get around comfortably, have a bed, do what I've got to do, and get around. Class A would be a little hard to go ahead and drive that thing around all over the place.
Yeah, that's that giant one.
Well, that's it too. And you know what? I'm not handy enough with my hands to go out there and put up a pop-up trailer. When it comes to hands, I'm a 3-finger typer, so if you can only imagine what it's like for me to go out there and mess around with doing any manual labor on one of those bad boys. That ain't my style.
Shopping. Hey, any of you guys ever go shopping for a mattress? We did that recently. Again, very old bed. We're talking 20 years old again or whatever. We didn't actually end up and going into a local mattress store, and that was just like going to a car dealer. First, the prices were a lot more than I would have realized, and then the salesperson had to go to the manager, like taking money off the mattress, and it was a really weird experience. We didn't end up buying it, but I didn't realize that. Maybe that's changed. Makes me feel old that things have changed, but I've never had that experience.
I think I bought one. I mean, we're going back. The last time I actually bought one was years ago. I went to a mattress store. I forget which one it was, but one of those, dealers, and bought a very expensive. And I had sticker shock. I had not realized how much a king size bed
exactly
cost, and it was about a couple $1,000s. The asking price was, and I've seen other ones where if you want the fancy motorized ones. Like the base could cost thousands of dollars, and then you have to buy the mattress that goes on top of the base, and they have the sleep numbers and all these different fancy things. You could spend $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 on
literally true. They had some display models, and the out the door was $11,000.
Yes, but now you see all these nowadays you can buy anything on the internet, and I actually not for myself but for one of my kids I bought one from a big box store. I think it was Sam's Club or Costco. And it literally came in a box that was about this big. And then I opened the box and took off the plastic. And it was like one of those self-inflating life rafts. It just exploded.
Wow. I've heard about that.
Mattress.
Well, talking about mattresses now, I remember I interviewed for jobs to sell adjustable beds and motor scooters as well.
Oh, boy.
If I were going to ever, Joe, you talk about not getting a car for a long time, and you like to use them. My king size mattress I've had for, I want to say 25 or 30 years.
Oh, wow.
But this one's really good.
That's
it's comfortable. My mother went out there and gave me a king size mattress from her place, and I use it on our sofa bed out in the living room, and I've got no problem doing it because I won't give up the one I have because it's so comfortable. And when you're messing with sleep, you don't want to mess with comfort.
Definitely don't.
No, because you think about it, you use it every day. On bed, you use it every night. So,
unless you live out of hotels like me, then it's another story. But
true.
But if I were going to ever get a different bed, the only one I could only see myself getting would be one of those adjustable beds. But those are expensive as well. Yeah, but, I think you touched on something which is really important and people should be conscious of. You can shop anything on the internet. Back in the day, you weren't able to do that. You had to go from every single place on the planet. So to be able to find access to these big ticket items, whether they're getting an automobile on the internet or a mattress or whatnot, you can definitely shop, and you could be able to save yourself a lot of legwork.
Everything. Obviously I didn't buy it on the internet, but I found my first house back in 2000,
right?
Online with all the pictures. I didn't even need a realtor. I got one to show it to me, but I basically found the house that I wanted just from seeing online ads. I mean, this was 20 years ago, like when
Wow.
that stuff really first started. Then the first vehicle I purchased after that, when I started our family, bought online, bought on eBay. Kept that sucker for 18 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah.
So when you guys define the word sales in this process, what are two words that come to your mind about the whole process?
Of buying what specifically?
I mean, whether you're dealing with salespeople or anything in general, there's two words. How do you define what this is all about when you're looking into items and so forth?
What I would come to say is do research.
Yeah.
You do. We have the internet now, and maybe it's not perfect, but we can do a lot of research that we couldn't do. I mean, buying a house 20 years ago, that Joe was an early adopter. But now, I mean, you can really look at anything and think of, like Joe said, the biggest ticket item most people buy is a house. And we have a lot of great real estate agents in our area. But you still want to know what you're looking for. And you can't go to an agent and say, I want a house.
Yeah.
Where do you want? How much do you think you could pay? What are you looking for? 4 bedrooms, 2 stories, whatever it may be. And with any product, I mean, look at we're using our computers now. That's a pretty high ticket item. I mean, you guys may be more in tune with computers than I am, but when I bought my latest computer, I had to do research, get what I'm looking for.
Definitely.
All right, so Ron, your 2 words are do research. Joe, give me 2 words.
Well, I'll give you the 2 words that my dad told me when we first started going car shopping.
Yeah.
And I learned everything from him about that. His famous 2 words were caveat emptor, which was basically buyer beware. Yeah, buyer is responsible for checking the quality and suitability of what he's trying to purchase, and no one else is going to look out for you except for you. So you better do your due diligence and research, and
Absolutely.
Yes. So
I like that. That's actually great advice.
All right, so I'm going to give you my 2 words. Right?
Go ahead.
Chess game. Chess game.
It is.
Chess game. I like messing with these imbeciles anyways, but the chess game is what my uncle taught me. If you can play chess with these people, you do your research is one thing, you get your information. But this is all won and lost between the years and playing chess. It's about being able to outsmart these guys and making sure that you use enough reverse psychology. That you can always come up with reverse psychology as part of the chess game.
Right.
And
well, I think it's true. I think you're right there, Scott. And I guess it also differs on the item and what your innate knowledge it is. I mean, for instance, cars, I'm pretty good at, but like with the refrigerator, I was totally out of my element. So the research, the caveat emptor is really, really, and it is a chess game because how much do you know? How much do they know?
But the problem is that the deck is stacked against you, because the dealer knows what the cost is. So I mean, obviously, they're not going to let it go without making a profit. The game is to try to get them to the lowest amount, the lowest amount of profit margin that they possibly can, or if they take a hit, it's because they need to recover some of their money. So, but I mean, they have all the information, and now, fortunately, with some of these online services out there, you could get information that in years past you never were able to get. So that what other people are paying for the same car and the same, all the same options and whatnot, so that when you go in there forearmed with that knowledge, and you could strike a better deal. I feel sorry for the people out there that probably, because I'm guessing that there are people out there that go into a dealership and they just figure that the sticker price is the price, and they just agree to pay it.
Wow.
And don't.
You're probably right.
Haven't been, trained by somebody to say, no, you don't pay the sticker price. You negotiate that amount. But I'm guessing that probably happens every day, and I'm sure that the car dealers, the salespeople are like, just like, ooh, we reeled one in.
They're salivating, but what happens with me is they don't salivate. They go their Tylenol 10. That's what happens there.
They lick their wound.
Yeah. You sound like, Scott, you sound like the kind of guy that after several hours, they just want you out of there. They just want to give you the deal they can give you and get you, which is a good thing.
That even that happened. You really brought up an interesting point, Ron. Another lifetime ago, I was in the home improvement business, and I set the unofficial Guinness Book of World Records for being in a house for 10.5 hours and closing a $25,000 deal.
10.5 hours?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
But, I kept Sears out of there. And this same guy that taught me how to sell, learn how to negotiate cars with me, we were in a house selling home improvements. And, I got to tell you what's funny about this story. This may not be quite Johnny Lightning territory. Folks should get to know Johnny Lightning, especially closer to the holidays, although snapping the legs at half the borders around it. But anyways, there's a mother and daughter. They were selling a place up north in Michigan, so they got the money to pay for the remodels in Farmington, Michigan, which is a beautiful area back in Metro Detroit. So I'm in there, we're pricing out cutouts, this and that, blah, 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 bay windows and whatever. And we were in there. And I stayed on one price for 3 hours. Everybody thought something happened to us.
One price, 3 hours?
Yeah, okay. Well, ironically, the mother and the daughter, then my uncle and I, or my adopted uncle, it was almost like a double date here, and we kept this clown out. One of my mentors said, you always have a line when you stay with it. Well, I guess I took it to a level of 10.5 hours. But we ended up getting the deal. It wasn't all high pressure, which a lot of these things are. It was about building rapport, building value. I just took it to a little different level. So when you say that they'd like to get me the heck out of there, oh, yeah, they don't want to deal with me. I mean, but it's all about trying to, what I've learned about dealing with car dealerships or any type of sales, whether it's timeshare or whatever, that's another one. I think timeshares are one of the worst investments on the planet. Is I like picking up sales techniques from these clowns. I really do. I said, oh, seen that one before. Try again. Go back to your manager. I could send these guys back and forth, and they probably have 10,000 steps at a time. I send them back and forth. Right? And picking up sales techniques is something that I've learned because you know what? Been there, done that. And you're right. There are times I could be a manager's worst nightmare. My wife doesn't like to go with me on these. In fact, on Friday when we were there, I said, stay at the bank. I'll take care of these clowns on my own, and I'll go ahead and find a vehicle that makes sense. All she had to do was come that night and just take care of the paperwork because I had already saved her a lot of trouble. She don't have the patience for it. She just nods her head and said, well, I don't want to go through this.
Of course. Well, that's the thing. Most people, aside from Scott, don't want to go through this. I mean, they have an incentive. You don't want to be at a dealership or at a store for hours. Now, some people like you are good at it, but the average person, they get worn down pretty quickly. And, which brings up a thought I had.
Okay.
Me? Okay. Now, I was going to bring up the thought that either actually looking at Joe and your other life, you're not involved in sales, but think of a mediation. To me, it's kind of the same situation. Even though you don't know what the numbers exactly are, that's the problem.
It depends on how you're negotiating, you're haggling. I have a suspicion that Scott negotiating a car dealer, it goes beyond what happens at one of our mediations. It actually reminds me of experiences that my I had with my dad and my sister had with my dad going to shop for cars. And I remember my sister's older than me, about 8 years older than me, and she went with my dad to go shop for a car one time, and she was so embarrassed after the experience that she's like, I'm never doing that again. I mean, afterwards she said she got me a great deal, and I'm glad, but I'll never do that again because she was so embarrassed. Because my dad would be the type of person to be like, when the manager comes in, like hands a little slip of paper and says, "Okay, this is what we'll charge you." I don't like rip it up, like this is bullshit. Can I say that? You'll have to end that. This is BS. I'm not paying this. Go back. This is the most I'll pay, and it would be so embarrassing for her that she wouldn't want to experience it. And I saw a little of that. The only time I ever went with my dad car shopping, it was something very much like that, and we brought in a car that, like you were saying, Scott, earlier, had issues. I don't think the windshield wipers worked. I don't know if the air conditioning worked, but it was like a January day with cold outside, so they wouldn't have known. And they gave us a good deal on the trade, but we just we weren't coming to a deal. It was going back and forth, and Dad was ripping up the little slip of paper. Okay, we're out of here. So we leave the dealership, and as we're getting in the car, we see the car salesman come out right with his hands. No, don't leave. So it made me think that you're not going to get your best deal sitting there in that room with the car salesman. If you want to get your best deal, you better be prepared to just walk away and then call their bluff, and then have them call you back in and say, okay, well we'll do it for your price. I remember at the end of that day, my dad had given this poor car salesman such a hard time that he actually gave him $100 bill to because he had driven such a good deal that he felt bad that he gave them a tip at the end of the day. But so I can understand why some people would be uncomfortable with it, because they don't want to do that type of haggling that's necessary to get the good deal, because they're not as confrontational as that.
Oh, come on, am I confrontational? Really? Come on, that's my middle name. I can't.
No, I'm not saying you, but I'm saying a lot of people.
Kidding with you. Yeah. I am confrontational. You guys know me well.
Yes.
Of course I'm confrontational, especially when it comes to breaking the 11th commandment, thou shalt not overspend. Yeah, I'm confrontational. Call it what you want. And I'm not worried about the 12th commandment, thou shalt not get caught, because it doesn't apply in this situation. But, when you think about it, okay, I've always alluded to picking up sales techniques, but there's other factors that go into this whole process. I don't care whether it's with mattresses, air conditioning, home improvement, hurricane protection. Here's the thing. If you got poor credit, they're going to charge you a lot more for the products and services anyways, because either you get it from them or you can't get it on. They're going to jack the interest rates up anyhow. So
that's true.
They're going to make sure they can make up the profit margins by charging you more money, a higher interest rate to justify the risk.
Yes.
And
that's definitely one thing to look at when you're going to buy anything like that, especially a car, because a lot of people will get tripped up. Same thing with these timeshares, which I would never ever buy. Right. But a lot of times the sales technique from the salespeople are, well, how much can you afford? Like what monthly payment could you afford? And people will think, okay, well, I could afford $300 a month for a car. Well, depending on how much of the interest rate they're charging you and how many years you're going to have to pay it off, you might be spending a lot more money on that vehicle than you should be if all your focus is on how much the monthly payment is. I've gone to a few of those timeshare things where they give you a free hotel for a weekend, and you have to go see the presentation. So the first thing I say to the salesperson is, under no circumstances will I be buying a timeshare today. I don't care if you give me what I think is the best deal in the world. I won't do it today. I might think about it and then get back to you, but I will not walk out of here today buying a timeshare. Now, sometimes they'll realize, okay, I'm not going to waste my time on this guy, and make it brief. But like you see, like afterwards, like, okay, the timeshare is this much money. Then 10 minutes later, when you say, no, thank you, it's half that price. And then it's half that price. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking to myself, and I'm telling them, so basically for the past hour, you've been trying to screw me.
Right.
Trying to get me to pay first this much money for the timeshare, then this much, then this much. Now you're telling me it's this much. Like, why should I trust anything you say? Why should I buy anything from you when you've been trying to get me to overpay for something for all this time, and now you're saying, oh, I could do it for this? And
That's a
their
good point.
classic sell is, well, how much do you pay for vacations in a year? We take vacations and we spend a week here, a week there. We'll spend this many thousands of dollars. And then, well, here you could only spend half that amount. Well, okay, but you're comparing apples and oranges. But that's how they get the people to buy timeshares, is by comparing how much somebody would sometimes, like, because we've gone years without even taking a vacation. So this year, for
Right.
instance, $0 on vacations, where some years it's more. But
Well, when you look at a lot of these big ticket items,
Timeshares.
my father-in-law's owned them for years. It was okay for him and my mother-in-law because they used to use them every year. Now what happens is the biggest problem with timeshares, you can't get rid of them. There's no real paper value to them anyhow. Automobile, you unload it. You unload a lot of different things. You just unload it and you deal with it. With timeshares, it to me is nothing more than, and there's no intrinsic value to them. So
Yeah.
in addition to what you guys said about getting screwed, that's one thing. And I know I go back to the car dealership a little bit, and we'll continue to go back and forth to these. I love the car demos, how they get you in their vehicle and said, okay, well, I don't mind driving this thing, but you know what? You're trying to sell me what you want to sell me versus what the heck I'm going to do. But that's okay. You want to give me a joyride so I can give you a Tylenol and a headache? You're more than welcome to do so. I'll just talk your ear off and get you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I don't really, frankly, care anyways. We'll see who's winning this battle. But, the one thing I had a problem with a lot of time with dealership situations is you're leaving business on the table. When I was in the home improvement business or anything that I was able to control without a manager, don't get me wrong, there were other things that I did. I've sold pools before, alarm systems and things like that. I enjoyed some of those. They were actually pretty good. But I don't like to leave business on the table. If I had to sell a window and only made $50 on it, I really didn't care, because it wasn't the $50 that you got paid. It's what you learned to get from start to finish is how you got to the finish line. And you were glad you were able to help somebody out. But again, there's so many variables that obviously there's a million shows on these. But I don't like to leave business on the table. You got to remember, if you're during an in-home situation, okay, you have a right of rescission of 3 days so that you can cool down a little bit. I was, high pressured here. I get out of it. And then of course, you have the post-close, which my dad actually taught me many years ago, where you have a cooling off period and reinforce everything that you had to do. Now, me being a journalist, okay, by trade, and nobody thought I could succeed in sales. But what I learned is with my writing skills, I was able to fill out an agreement so thoroughly that, they rarely had a problem collecting their money. And I was able to keep a lot of my orders intact because I was very thorough. I didn't mind spending the extra time reinforcing these people. We're doing everything. There won't be any problem on the end. Some guys like to get in and out of there, don't post-close. You got a cancellation at the door tomorrow. There's ethics involved in what you're trying to do. I'm going to go over a lot of different scenarios here. We talk about things over the years. We talk about the one-call close. We all know what that is. Either you do it then or not at all. Then we know about high-pressure sales, which goes hand in hand. Whether it's, like you say, Joe, the timeshare thing, which I think is the biggest joke of them all. But anything with sales is a joke, for the most part. But there's certain things that are, to me, way higher on the joke side, and timeshare sales are there. I've already alluded to the Father's Day situation where, if you're looking to get a vehicle, and I got to tell you, one of the ladies I dealt with over at the dealership that ultimately, she learned a little lesson about Father's Day when I related that experience. Wow, I didn't realize it was that slow. And you're able to make out, well, more power to you. That's what she told me. But getting back to what everybody talks about, the payment buyer. And that's where I think managers tend to think, well, we don't have any deals going on. Well, fine. If it's going to be you, I'll find out what I'm going to do. Could I have spent less money on my wife's Honda or another vehicle? Yeah, I could have put her in a Hyundai or a Kia, something less money, but then you're sacrificing safety. But big ticket items, whether it's AC, whether it's home improvement, hurricane, it doesn't make any difference because the game is still the same. We talk about cars, we talk about mattresses, we talk about air conditioning, home improvement, hurricane protection. But the thing that has to be understood here is you do have to get multiple estimates, even though many years ago, I would go ahead and get them to sign on the first estimate because I had I would take the written ads and say, hey, you want to buy something, which is a Yugo, 200 times 10 is $2,000. There you go. But then you understand the psychology you could get. That's where you want quality or do you want quantity?
Yeah.
True. No.
But then you're talking about building rapport. Nowadays, most of the business you get are callbacks, and callbacks were a sin back in the day when I was doing it because nobody ever called you back. Now it's a different game where it's more of a consultative approach. They're going to give you the old advertising discount. And of course, everybody knows about the manager close. We've already alluded to that on the broadcast. And going back to my version of the chess game, playing the mind games. And of course, we talk about internet shopping as well as poor credit and higher interest rate in home sales. So when I'm saying by mentioning all these different things, there's so many different variables involved in what goes through the process that you have to be able to outthink them. And most people may not have the patience, regardless of what type of thing that you're really looking at.
Scott, I think you're 100% right on that. And it really depends on the item and the knowledge, like you said. That brings me back to something Joe said back in 2000, when he essentially bought a house on the internet. I would say houses are the biggest ticket item, but they're also a little bit unique in the sense that many times you're buying a house from the present owner, unless you're buying, a new construction. And I've heard, and I haven't had the personal experience, but I've heard that some people, when they buy a house, the present owner really doesn't understand the value. Everyone seems to overestimate the value of their house and thinks, I got the best house because I got this flooring, I got this thing, and all the home improvements that you're talking about, Scott, and I don't know if either of you had experience of buying houses, to get the seller to be realistic on what it's worth. Just because they put in $10,000 worth of home improvements doesn't mean you think it's worth $10,000 more.
Right.
Definitely not. Actually, back in my old neighborhood, one of our neighbors spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to sell their house because they had it on the market and it wouldn't sell, and they did all sorts of improvements in order to get the house sold. Somebody did come in and buy it. First thing they did, they ripped every single thing out that they put in. Now, did the home improvements make it more visually appealing so that they wanted to buy the house? I don't know. I mean, I would tend to think that whoever bought it, all they cared about was the bones of the house because they were going to rip the stuff out anyway. But I don't know how I would feel if I spent tens of thousands of dollars and then the first thing somebody did was to rip all this stuff out. But the same thing happened when my mom sold her house. We tried to, she had done home improvements as well. And I mean, it wasn't just before she sold, but years before. And we were trying to make the house look as nice as possible to possible sellers. And from what I understand, after the sellers bought the house, they gutted the house, at least a lot of the house as well. So you're right, Ron. Like just because you think your house is the the cat's meow doesn't mean that somebody coming in is going to have the same taste as you do.
That's right. And Scott, since you were in the home improvement business, would you say you should do home improvements for you, what you like, not to sell your house? Is that a fair assessment?
Yes and no, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times it depends on the area that you're in. For example, when I was in Detroit, and believe me, trying to sell windows in Detroit, it is an interesting experience in its own right. What I would do is take a lot of their old wood windows that were really single pane, turn them into less expensive thermal windows, like they had a single hung and a double hung. Now, a single hung is usually priced out less because there's less moving parts. Then you go ahead and sell it because now you're trying to save on your energy bill, but you can move it a lot faster, because I would pity the next idiot that's got to sit across the table and deal with me. Okay. But no, with all due respect, you want to do some cosmetic changes like, siding looks good. You insulate it a little bit, just basic general maintenance and alteration. It's one thing to go out there and put a big window in an area where, you're in a very high crime area, or do you go ahead and put thermal windows in there where on the surface it looks good and they don't have to deal with the headache later? It just depends on the area for which you live in. If you're putting them, a minimal amount of money, it's worth it. If you're putting in, well, let's just compare some areas, okay? You could go to West Boca Raton or East Boca, wherever the houses are worth a lot more. Does it pay to go ahead and invest 20, 30, 40, $50,000 on it? No. If you're in an area where you're looking to sell it a little bit, you gain a short-term benefit off of it, and then ultimately sell it from the blind eye where it looks better. Yeah, I think it's worth it. But in Detroit, it was a different story, and depends on the area. Joe.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that, and I would think, I don't know if you gents would agree that doing something like putting in, in our area in South Florida, putting in storm windows would add the value to any house, whereas doing kind of like what you were saying, Joe, the interior, more cosmetic-y thing, because it's really a personal taste at that point. What I would like, Joe may say, that's ugly, and just take it out.
I mean, there's probably minimal things you could do. I've always heard that if you're going to upgrade something in your house, the kitchen and your bathrooms would be the thing to do. And now I don't know if I would go out with it and spend $40,000 on your kitchen, but if you have like Formica cabinets or Formica countertops or something, if you could do something minimal like reface them to like the more modern color scheme and whatnot, it might help. It might help to get it sold if you could do it without too much of a expense. Like one thing I wouldn't do, like for instance, was put a pool in. Like in South Florida, if you want a pool, you should buy a house that already has a pool. We know somebody who just recently bought a house and then are putting in a pool, which is a very big expense. And my immediate thought was, well, if you wanted a pool, you look for a house that already has one, because you don't see that much of a difference in price between houses that have pools and houses that don't. But if you want to go put your own pool in after the fact, you're going to spend, quite a bit of money doing it.
Yeah, when I was in Michigan, I did sell above ground pools for a summer season. It was pretty interesting. It was all right in Michigan. It was a seasonal thing. I really enjoyed it because the place I work for was called Kayak Pools. They built a really good pool. They had the decks and all that stuff. I enjoyed doing that. We could do an
entire show on just the things that you've done in your lifetime, because it sounds like
you're right.
You've done a lot of different things.
Well, that's why this show is fun. I got a lot of stories to tell you, and I got a captive audience. Hopefully that might learn a little something here.
It's true, Scott. Next to you, I just feel boring.
Huh? No,
next to you, I just feel boring.
Well, not really. No, I think it's fun to be able to convey these little things to a lot of people out there. But you know what, Joe? You make a very interesting point. For example, in my condo, one of the things I'm going to be doing is taking my shower, which is, where you have a tub shower thing, and turn it into a walk-in shower. That's when, because as you get older, it's harder to lift up and go in. That's what you call a practical improvement. Now,
right.
Another thing we're going to be looking at is getting a sunroom so that we already have the concrete slab already, extended square feet by 300 square feet. Good to be able to do that, so that way we could go out a little bit. So if you know that you're going to gain something where you're able to gain personally and then it enhances resale, you do it that way. A pool, especially where we have a lot of associations, I usually go to the community pool myself. Of course, I wouldn't have a place to pull in at my place. And then you're able to go there. So it just depends on the community that you live. But yeah, Ron, with all due respect, I've seen a lot of different scenarios over the years. As a journalist, there are times that even with I sold home improvements, I was making good enough money so that I could still work with my passion covering sporting events on the air as well. I'm not saying I got paid a lot of money for it. I got paid well, but I made a lot of contacts to do a lot of different things. So I think when you look at big ticket items, I've always thought refrigerators were the kind of things that you go to BrandSmart or Best Buy. You usually get those over there, and you pretty much choose what you want. But nowadays we have the internet shopping, which has changed things. So my question to you, Joe and Ron, are we becoming a society? We know that the Macy's are gone, the Sears are gone, and Hudson's, I know, was big in Detroit. Those days are gone. But how do you define what shopping is nowadays when you're looking for some of these items? Now that we have access to Amazon and all these things, or sight unseen, because with all due respect, you still have to go to Home Depot, Lowe's, and all these just to get your material and bring on the contractors.
That's true. I mean, well, one, a lot of the stuff I've done for online for a long time, like refrigerators. Like I've always gone to like the scratch and dent outlet stores for we got a lot of our appliances, refrigerators and washing machines, dryers at the Sears outlets or the BrandsMart outlets, and like some of them like had like a dent on the side that you would never see because it was on the side, and because of that, some person who had paid full price for it told the drivers, hey, I'm not accepting that, take this back, and then I get it for $1,000 less than what the original price was, and I'm happy. So that's my philosophy for buying appliance and the like. But I mean, but as far as these stores not being there, and people better start thinking about that and supporting these stores and not just buying things online for delivery. Although things like appliances, I don't think you can go on Amazon for that. But I know one of the things that we were talking about was doing a show about millennials and how they're destroying everything, and I don't know if it's just the millennials or all of us, but with all the stuff being bought online, there's less stores that are going to be around for us to actually go in and walk in and buy stuff, and that'll be a shame. Because stores are not going to stay open just so that we can go in there and look and touch things, and then just so that we can go home and buy them on the internet. So
it makes you kind of wonder what's the future in store for BrandsMart and Best Buy. I know places like that, you still got to believe at some point or another. Some of these places, we know Walmart's obviously not going anywhere. No. Thankfully, some of these stores aren't going anywhere, but we all realize that technology and buying habits have changed, Ron.
No, you're right. You're right. And you're right, Scott and Joe. I think you made a really good point about the local stores. I mean, there's still some things, and maybe it's an age thing, like talking about that sometimes I want to actually see and touch what the item is. I want to get the best price. And I'm a sale guy, definitely will, like Tello's buying a shirt or a pair of sneakers or whatever. I've done the online thing. One thing I found about the online is sometimes I think it makes you jump because you don't have to work to actually get it. I see something and like, oh, I want that. And people will buy things and they'll get it. And then you might have some kind of buyer's remorse. Where if you actually take the effort to go and look for something, maybe you really want it. And I know people that buy pretty much everything online. And then when it gets there, it's like, well, did I really need this? Did I not need this? And it's a culture. And there's the issue of, like you, Scott, you were saying the store. How about the neighborhood mall? I mean, when we were all young, that was the big thing. You go to the mall, you walk around the mall. You don't necessarily buy things, but you go to the mall, you go shopping, you almost like a community gathering place in a lot of places. In Florida, if it's hot outside, you go to the mall. I'm sure up in Michigan, if it's cold, it was a good place to go too. And that's kind of all gone, and a lot of places are closing, and of course COVID has accelerated it, I think. But a lot of places are closing, and my question, you guys, do you think it's ever going to come back, or do you think the actual stores are going to be a thing of the past?
No, I think certain things will. I mean, I can't. I mean, me personally, I don't go to stores to buy stuff because most stores don't carry stuff my size. But I think for most people, they want to go into a store and try things on. It's almost impossible to order clothes online and get it. I mean, how many times have you been to a Macy's or Bloomingdale's or whatever with your wife, and they'll go in with 10 items and come out and not one thing looked good when they tried it on. Can you imagine the pain that would be involved if you bought all that stuff online and you had to return all that stuff? So I think stuff like that isn't going anywhere. I think the problem is the stuff that is like a commodity, like or not so much a commodity, like a TV, where you could get it pretty
Mhm.
much anywhere, and you know what you're getting. You can read reviews and say, "Oh, this is the best TV." You might not even actually have to see it yourself in person because there's online reviews that tell you how good it is. And I could go, I could go to Best Buy and get it, or I could go, and order it online and have it delivered. But I think what would happen maybe is not so much you would see these stores disappear, but you would see that they would have more of an online footprint. Like Best Buy might go from having a lot of things in the store to lesser things, and then just selling most of their stuff online. Because I don't know about you, but there's certain things that I like to buy on Amazon. There's certain things I wouldn't, that like, because I don't know necessarily who I'm getting it from. So like a TV or a computer, me personally, I wouldn't buy it from Amazon, because even though I know Amazon would stand behind it, it's coming from some other company, some other seller somewhere.
Right.
I would feel better about buying it from the the Best Buys of the world, or a Costco, where I know I can bring it back to a store locally near me, and I don't have to worry about dealing with some Amazon seller that I don't know from Adam.
Well, plus you want to be able to ask questions. I don't know about you guys. I was never one of those types of people that could ever do online classes. I'd have to be there in school to interact with the teacher and ask questions. And you think about it, even when we go back to the car industry for a minute, and I tell you, Joe, I'm so enamored with your background. Everybody always used to say, are you able to make more money selling new cars or used cars? Everybody back in the day wanted to sell used cars. They'd make a lot more money with that big banger versus the old company deal where you're lucky to make $25 to $100 a vehicle, whereas back in the used car lot, that's where all the money was made in the game. I had to point it out to your background. But when you talk about shopping for an automobile online, here's an X factor that people have to understand. It's hard enough to get a decent trade for your vehicle at the dealership. But how do you assess a trade, just by putting miles in and how old it is in terms of what you're going to get? Anyhow, I know there's a place called Carvana where you can pick your car and it'll bring it to your door. But how legitimate is that? I've always, I embrace a test drive, but I don't think I could buy an automobile online and have it delivered at all.
No.
There's just some things you just can't do.
No, and I think the people that are doing that are probably going to places like CarMax or whatever that has a whole bunch of cars, trying them out first, and then maybe they don't buy it there, and then they go online and find it somewhere else. But yeah, I think what happens though is if someone does do that, they might see something at that store. So I think that the places that actually have the cars on the lot have the advantage. I mean, we did something similar to that. When we were shopping for our most recent car, I went online and scoured the internet for vehicles, and then I wound up going to a big seller of previously owned vehicles that had big selection. I had no idea what kind of car I was going to actually buy when I got there, but I wanted to go to a place that had a big selection so I could try different things. I went there looking at one particular vehicle, and then wound up seeing something else that was a good deal and bought it right there on the spot, that day, because it was there for me to actually see and test drive. Whereas if I was online looking for something, I probably would never have done that.
Let me tell you, years ago when I used to travel a lot, when I only was covering the Detroit Lions, but travel around the country, as you guys know, I rented a lot of vehicles, so I was able to find an SUV, and I rented cars too. Don't get me wrong, but since I'm an SUV kind of a person, I would rent all kinds of SUVs, so I pretty much knew how they drove, and that made it easier. Another thing that's really though helped me in the automobile situation is I have a family member that got me employee discounts, so I knew full well what I was able to get. They had to give me employee pricing with no negotiation. So that helped me with some of my negotiations as well. But being able to drive a vehicle via a rent-a-car made it a lot easier for me to adjust to being higher off the ground, and I knew what I wanted. So that helped cut down some of the process. Sorry to interrupt you, Ron. Go ahead.
No, Scott, I was actually just going to agree with you and to pick up on and definitely 100% agree with what Joe said. Something like, it depends on the item. Something like a car, I may be old fashioned. I want to drive not only the model, I want to drive the car that there you go. Look, there I am in the back looking amazed at the touch screen refrigerator.
Look at this.
What I was saying, like with a car, I want to drive the actual car I'm going to buy. You know, you know, whether it's pre-owned or new, whatever. That's because I want to just see how it feels and if I'm comfortable with it. Whereas, like, yeah, a refrigerator, I love that picture. You know, I kind of, you know, like Joe said in the beginning, to me, a refrigerator is I want to have cold food, and that's it. But I wouldn't buy it online. Like a computer, like the computer I'm using tonight, I bought at a bigger store, one of the wholesale clubs that Joe mentioned. And, you know, I did research, but I went in and picked it up, and I just felt more comfortable buying it and bringing it home rather than ordering it. Now, on the other hand, I needed toner cartridges. I was fine buying those online today. I actually bought some earlier today that I needed for my printer. I wouldn't buy the printer online though, because you know, so it depends. And everyone's a little bit different.
Do you buy brand, like the brand ones, or do you buy the ones that are refills?
Yeah, the ones that are refill. How about you?
Yeah, same.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, the ones that are refill, which is dramatically less.
Well, I don't worry about that. The smart part of my other half here handles all that stuff, so I don't really worry about that.
Yeah.
She did. I let her take care of all those other extemporaneous items. I like to slug it out with these people. I've even joked around with people that in my home improvement days, a woman having a baby would be a lot less painful than dealing with me when it comes to selling an item. You know, get the name Raging Bull for nothing. But what, you know, I mean, it's just because it is what it is. The anxiety, the mental thing that you have to do is whether or not, like you said, Joe, okay, with timeshares, you know, I mean, I don't know if we had to rate all these different things on a scale of 1 to 5, what would be the worst? I'll tell you, after talking to you, Joe, I put timeshares right at the top of the list.
Well, Scott or Joe, how many people have you met that are actually happy with their timeshares after they've had it for a number of years?
I know I can name 2 people off the top of my head.
Really? See? Okay. I'm surprised.
They have multiple ones.
Wow.
And the key for them is that it wasn't classically the original timeshares were you bought a specific property and a week or whatever at that particular property, and you had to love that particular property to want to go back there the same week every year at that particular property. But it's kind of evolved. Like some of the people I know that had them and enjoyed using them, like they had points that like well, one, it depends on where you get them. Like they own them in Orlando, and so many people from other places want to come to Orlando and use timeshares. That was very easy for them to trade their timeshares to go other places when they want to go to other places, like if they want to go to Hawaii or whatever, because they could always find people to trade with or whatever. However it was structured, it was very flexible for them. So, you know, I mean, for some people it works. The question I wonder is whether they overpaid for it.
Right. No,
that's a good point.
If they got a good deal, and you know what happens in a year like this where you don't want to travel, and you're paying anyway, because it's. I mean, from what I understand, you don't just pay the initial cost for the timeshare. You pay a monthly fee for the upkeep of the property. So you know, like I said earlier, when they try to get you to buy it, their big selling tool is to get you to compare how much you normally spend for, you know, resort accommodations in a year, and then what it would cost with them. But you know, to me, that's comparing apples and oranges, because in a year I might not go anywhere, or you know, I might get really good deals. Like, so I'm just not a big fan of those, but some people love it. So there's something for everybody.
There's something for everybody.
Yeah, when you talk about timeshares, I will say this: I've stayed in them with my in-laws have done well many years. When my mother-in-law and my father-in-law had them, and they got good use out of them. So with all due respect, more power to them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm before I ever married into this family, I never really knew much about them. I used to like to go ahead and listen to their things. Like out in St. Martin with my ex-wife when I got married first time, and I used to drive these people nuts to get all the free stuff out of them. And I had a field day with them because I wanted to play their game. But I will tell you this. Me, I've always been a hotel person myself. I have, because that way I'll deal with the consequences of where I have to stay, but I dictate it from start to finish. Now, the first timeshares I've ever stayed in were out in Branson, Missouri, and they're filled with them out there, and Arizona's filled with them, and we know Florida has a lot of them too. And the places are beautiful places, and they accommodate a lot of people. So there's no downplaying the significance of how nice they really are, but the
Yeah.
cost you have to pay. Now, one of the big ticket items we haven't really mentioned here that you guys are more familiar with than I am is water softeners here in South Florida, because I know the water down here, from what I understand, isn't very good. You talk about one of the biggest dog and pony shows I've ever seen about comparing to drinking water. My goodness, you South Floridians got the hustle of the world with all this lead and all that stuff in there. I've had places offer me a job. I sat there for a couple of days. I don't think so. I don't. If I want to be a scientific chemist about playing with water and all that, good luck. But you have a lot of those.
That's something I've never bought. You know,
I haven't either.
this harkens back to the show that we were talking about, like how things are different today than we were when we were kids. Like I remember when we were kids, we would drink water out of a garden hose. Like
Yep.
you drank tap water. Like I don't know when it became a thing to drink water from plastic bottles. You know, they came from the store, like, you know, rather than just drink it out of the sink. Although I have to say that since our refrigerator's been on the fridge, I've been drinking right from the tap water, you know, from the sink, and the rest of my family's looking at me like I'm like crazy, like I'm taking my life in my hands, drinking water from the sink. But you know,
That's
so
true, though.
I don't know anything about, I don't know
Yeah,
for
I don't either.
water softeners or anything like that.
Well, they've tried to offer me a job because they knew I had in-home sales. That's why I learned about it. Then again, that shouldn't surprise you guys after all this time on here. But I figure I don't need any of that. I go over to Home Depot, buy one of those little whatchamajoggers you stick underneath the sink, and that's good enough for me when I drink that stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, just a little Brita filter or something does the trick, or whatever.
Well, but when you think about it, though, you know what they get for these units between 2,500 to 5,000. Then you have another thing out there, a big ticket item. You talk about solar panels, which actually probably
Mm-hmm.
isn't a bad investment. Then you have the water filters, the water thing in the pool. So there are some valid things here in South Florida, especially the solar. I know solar nowadays is really, really huge.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
Solar,
taking off.
the issue with solar is how long you're going to keep your house, because if you're going to buy a new house, or you're buying a house and then you're going to be in that house for the next 20, 30 years, then solar might make sense. You might recoup your investment.
right.
But if you're not, then not so much. And then, you know, if you have storms, then you have to deal with that issue. And if you have to put a new roof on, you have to take it off and then put it back on.
Right.
You know, but you have to factor in how are you financing it? I mean,
Right.
you know, I've seen people that use a particular type of financing that, you know, adds money, like, you know, is paid through your like electric bill or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for one of our clients that, you know, that we represented for property damage claim, I saw them use this particular company for financing of windows and roof, and the amount of interest that they were charged for the financing for these home improvements was staggering. Like over, you know, it was like 25 or 30 years, they were paying as much interest for the upgrades as they were paying, you know, the principal amount. So
Wow.
they were paying a lot of money. And, you know, if you were doing that for solar, you know, unless you were getting some massive rebates and incentives from the government, I just don't see how, you know, it'd be very hard for you to recoup that money over the time span that you know, you're living in that property.
Well, many years ago, alarm systems were a big ticket item. And they really were. You could get whatever system you want. Nowadays, you can buy them at Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's true.
I sold alarm systems too. Then again, what is if you didn't sell anyways? But but you know what? Alarm systems nowadays are very affordable with the monthly payment. You just decide what you want to put in there, whether it's cameras and so forth. And I think they're a worthwhile investment. They really are, depending on the system that you actually get. But many years ago, these things used to be priced out like a real big ticket item, and all of a sudden, technology and things become a lot easier, and they made the programs a lot more. But
well, one thing to keep in mind is when if you're interested in buying a security system, a lot of times you'll get a discount on your home insurance for doing it. So it might not actually cost you anything at the end of the day, because if your homeowner's insurance is going to give you a credit of like say $300 or $400 or whatever for the alarm system, and the monitoring is like say $25 a month, it might just pay you to do it anyway. So
well, that's a sound investment for. It's a sound investment for something that is peace of mind. And I have to say, with alarm systems, that's how I landed in the Coral Springs Chamber of Commerce. That was another lifetime ago when Ron Renzy saw me as a quiet guy. Anybody can imagine me ever being quiet. Once upon a time, I really was quiet. And our group.
I remember those days.
Yeah. I was kind of boring. Everybody would throw out my brochures. And then my wife says, you aren't staying in the alarm business. You're going to stay in the Coral Springs Chamber. So what do I have? One of these things all day, microphone. Ever heard of it? Ever hear it? All that stuff. Good stuff, right?
Oh, we've heard of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who would have thought Motor City Bad Mouth and the Coral Springs Regional Chamber of Commerce, Shirley Klein, and the rest of those people we consider our teammates. We get to see them a couple times a month. But yeah, with all due respect, I think alarm systems are a worthwhile investment. Joe alluded to. They really are, because they give you a peace of mind, and there is an incentive off your homeowner's insurance as well. I actually had a No Limits broadcast with one of my old employers, and we talked about it for a while. But I think what's so fun about this broadcast is we've been able to touch on so many different items, big ticket or not, that folks, I would advise you to, if you can put up with my crazy behavior on this broadcast that Ron Renzy is pointing out to me, what is it you didn't sell, Scott? My goodness, you know what? My goodness, what can I tell you? I've seen a lot. I really have. I would advise you, when you listen to this broadcast, folks, it'll be titled Big Ticket Items. Get a pen and paper. And if you don't get cauliflower ears, then you're better than most, because I'm going to tell you, you'll have to write a lot of this stuff down about what to deal with, all the different things. Because when you talk about the psychology of buying big ticket items, the whole question people have to understand is, what are you going to get out of it? And make sure that you don't overpay for it, and do the proper research, and don't give in that easy.
Yeah.
Scott, I agree 100%. And just to follow up, what both you and Joe are saying is, really anything could be a big ticket item, whether it's pots and pans, whether it's a bicycle, whether it's a musical instrument, whether it's jewelry. I mean, there's low end and there's high end in many, many things. So I think you just need to know what you're talking about when you're paying your money, and do your research.
Negotiation. Well, many years ago, vacuum cleaners, door-to-door salespeople, they used to peddle those vacuum cleaners door-to-door. Never dealt with one of those before. Although
I'm shocked.
that's maybe one of the few things I haven't done. But I've gone to enough home shows where I've had people ask me, hey, do you want to consider selling vacuum cleaners? All you have to do is look at my resume being in the home improvement business, and you got more job offers than politicians tell lies. Well, maybe not quite that many a week from an election. But, when they see, that you're not afraid to understand the word negotiation, folks, that's what you have to do. You don't go ahead and take the first price and say, that's good enough for me, because here's the biggest thing that people have to understand. And I tell this to car dealers all the time. You may want to put me in what you want to put you in, but the reason why this payment is what it is, okay, is I don't want my credit to go badly because I made a decision that didn't fit my budget. They don't care about that. You wonder why you have high interest rates, okay? Wonder because you have bad credit. and you want to make sure you can afford what you're able to afford, and that's what it's all about. Nobody cares. They're only concerned about profit and what the commission is. I don't have a problem with a commission salesperson earning commission on me. Just don't think you're going to make your house payment because of me, because of my stupidity and ignorance about lack of research.
Do your research, yeah.
Right. Everybody's entitled to make a living, and that's fine and dandy. I get it. I was in that position as well, as many people are, and there's a lot of sales organizations that are very ethical. But if you do your due diligence, and the thing is, folks, you've got more tools and resources now than you ever did in the past. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to make a sound decision regardless of what you're looking to get. There really isn't.
Definitely. I mean,
Agreed.
honestly, it doesn't have to be a big ticket item. I'll be in, a store like Walmart or Target, and I'll see a item on the shelf, and the first thing I'll do is take out my phone and type in what that item is and do a comparison price to see if it's cheaper any place else. And if it is, I'll take that to the counter and say, hey, this is or sometimes this is on your own website for this price. Like it might be a $30 item. Look, your website has it for $25. Will you price match your own website? And I'll either save money right on the spot at the store, or I'll just buy it from somewhere else. So
Smart shopping.
It's good to comparison shop no matter what you're buying. I mean, if it's like $5 or whatever, it might not be worthwhile, but a $30, $40, $50 item, yeah, I'll price it. It doesn't take that much to do.
No, it's easy. Everybody's got their phone.
Yeah, no, that's true. As a lot of people got to realize you got these little portable computers in the palm of your hand. I remember the first time I ever had a cell phone, I had to mount it into my vehicle underneath. It cost me $175 to take it in, $175 to take it out.
I mean, one of those big brick phones.
That's it too. Yeah, I know. You see how far we've come with cell phones. These things called smartphones. If we're up to me, and I was back in the old days, I'd rather have a flip phone and be done with it. But unfortunately, I can't live without it these days.
Oh, I thought you want the one that's on the wall that you crank and go, operator, give me, Killman 3, 2, 1. No, that you don't want to go back that far. Huh?
If it were up to me, I'd have one of those rotary phones and have one of those. But there's perception and there's reality, and. But yeah, I remember. I miss those old days. But now, unfortunately, we're not going back to the past. Okay, I don't know if we're going back to the future, but now we're here in the present. So go figure. Try to read all this Freudism that we're trying to put into this broadcast, which I think, to me, is a very enlightening broadcast, which has enabled us to cover a lot of things that most people should be aware of. But if there's any lesson, Joe Littman, what do you think people should take out of this broadcast?
Like I said earlier. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Do your homework, and no one's going to protect you when you go into a car dealership or a mattress store or appliance store. No one's going to be looking out for you, so you better look out for yourself and do your homework and do your testing and do your research to make sure that you're not only getting the best deal you can, but you're getting the right product or vehicle or whatever that's right for you.
What about you, Ron?
I really couldn't have said it better myself. Do your research, buyer beware, everything that Joe said. I just add, I got to run because I'm going into Joe's appliance store now. So back of him there.
I want to know before we leave is why on Father's Day you weren't buying a vehicle for yourself, but you were buying a vehicle for your wife. Now, Father's Day, shouldn't you be taking care of yourself and looking out for you and getting a new vehicle for you?
Well, that's a good question. Here's the deal. She had just she moved to a better branch, and there's no way I was going to let her take her old battered vehicle with no air conditioning in the state of Florida to work. Okay. And so I had to make sure I wanted to take care of numero uno, and that was her, not me.
Oh, well, that's nice.
You're a good man.
So I have no problem with it. I know I could batter these clowns into submission. The way I like to deal with some salesmen is like big time wrestling. I'll body slam them and slam them to the canvas and beat them up like a bunch of pinatas and really don't think twice about it. Call me a Harvey, call whatever you want. But I guess the whole thing is the moral of the story is don't let them wear you out. You wear them out.
That's a good way to look at it. And Joe,
like a 15-round heavyweight fight. Okay, and make sure you're the last one standing. And if you go for an early knockout punch, you knock them out. But you make sure. But you don't let them wear you out. You wear them out. If you got enough perseverance, it'll save you a lot of aggravation, save you a lot of money. So I know this. All right, so Joe, as we wrap up the broadcast, why don't you let everybody know how they get a hold of
you? Okay. You're
good.
At the Board Law Group. We're a property damage law firm in Coral Springs on Sample Road. Our telephone number is 954-749-3151, or you can get me by email at jrl@lknoerresq.com, and I know it's a mouthful. And we are your property damage law firm. They'll help you if you have a hurricane or water loss, fire, tornado, anything that could damage your house or commercial property that you own.
All right, Ron, you're next.
Thank you. I'm not as talented as Joe with the backgrounds. I'll just have to talk. I'm also a lawyer. My firm is Wahlberg and Renzy, located in Coral Springs, Florida. We are an appellate and commercial litigation law firm. We can be reached by telephone at 954-757-1212 or on the internet by email at info@Wahlberg, WALLBERG-Renzy, RENZY.com, or on social media.
All right, as for us, here's how you get a hold of us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, follow us at South Florida Tribune. YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. I'll give you 6 reasons why you should subscribe to it at no cost. You have the Sports Exchange, No Limits, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Real and the Rare, Fantasy Football, and you are watching and listening to the South Florida Tribune podcast. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have our media distribution partners on there, affiliates, columns. We have our contributors' writings from our columnists, the Motor City Monitor, and you can find our broadcast partners on there as well. If you want to email us, feel free to do so at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth. And also on the website, we also have national news and sports on there, weather. So we want to make sure that we have everything, a one-stop website that you can find it all. If you want to hear the audio version of the broadcast, you can do so through Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. So again, that's Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. So, we have lots of different ways to get a hold of us. If you have any suggestions that you want to give Ron, Joe, and myself for ideas of the show, we certainly welcome them as well, and on top of what we come up with. It's really a privilege to have an opportunity to work with 2 guys like you, because I know that we can share real life stories and try to hopefully, if we can get as many people as we can to get something out of these broadcasts, then it's certainly worth our while to continue to produce them. And I'll tell you what, I want to make an announcement here tonight that we're looking to accomplish, and this is one of the shows that will be targeted for it, is we plan to do a lot of streaming after the first of the year. Well, you'll be able to stream these broadcasts live as well through the different distribution sources. I'll get into more details down the road, but streaming is in the forecast. So I have a lot of great things on tap for 2021, and 2 great bright spots to make the South Florida Tribune podcast a strong one. I couldn't be surrounded by 2 better individuals than Joe Littman and Ron Renzy. If they could put up with me and the fact that I've been all over the place 9 million years and back and forth with all these different stories that I've gone, then to me they are as good as it gets. So meanwhile, you guys are the best. Ron, why don't you give everybody the COVID message, please?
Be safe, wear your mask, take it seriously.
Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
What he said.
Well, then I guess I'm supposed to say ditto and have less to say than both of you guys, since I probably had a lot more to say. throughout some of this. No, I think it's a pretty good balance there with two of the best co-hosts on the planet. So meanwhile, on behalf of Joe Littman, Ron Renzy, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the South Florida Tribune Podcast. And our goal is to make it fun, make it real, and make them better. And so stay tuned for our next episode. Good night, everybody, and have yourself a great weekend. Until the next time.